everybody. Welcome to a special Christmas edition of the Friday Night Locker Room. I am sitting in for the incomparable Giles Malone, who is out of the country right now. I'm Tom Palermo with Space Coast Daily. Along with me is, of course, the swamis of the Space Coast when it comes to sports. We've got Steve Wilson and Orvile Susong. And these gentlemen have been extremely busy here the last week since we last shot our show out at the 7-on-7 football game. But Steve, let's talk a little bit about the holiday basketball action down in Vero.
You know, a lot of excitement in and around Brevard County. The Cocoa Tigers and the Rockledge Raiders traveled to Vero Beach to play in the Vero Beach Hoopla Holiday Classic. And it's, whether you win or lose, obviously you want to win, but it's the level of competition that you're more interested in during the tournament time. And both teams played some quality opponents over the weekend. So is it going to help them? Absolutely, regardless of the outcome. The Tigers were a little sluggish the first game. Raiders, I thought, played well, but they came up on the short end. But like I said, in the long run, it's going to be good for both teams.
Orville, what's your take on this weekend's action?
Well, like you said, it is the holiday edition of the Friday Night Locker Room here on Space Coast Daily. First off, Stephen, I would like to thank you for the nice present you and Giles got us. Never drove an automobile like that before, and Steve just loves rolling around in the back. What a huge thing that down the road people are looking, wanting to know what kind of automobile that is. So from Steve and I, we want to thank you and Giles for that. Basketball-wise, like Steve said, we traveled down to Vero. We also traveled over to Orlando earlier in the week and broadcast the Melbourne Bulldogs at Amway Arena. And that was the first time we'd been at the new arena where the Orlando Magic call home. A beautiful venue there. We saw a great basketball game. We went downtown, had lunch, came back and watched the Orlando Magic play. So it was a great game there. And then yesterday we went down to Vero and watched the Raiders and the Cocoa Tigers play. Like Steve said, both of them come out on the short end of the stick. But I think you learn a lot by going and doing those type of tournaments.
Well, Steve, Orville, I know we're coming into the second half of the prep season for basketball. I know we've got, you guys are extremely excited about the prospects for some of our teams. And why don't we start talking about the 2A teams right now, Steve?
Yeah, the 2A girls teams, there were 2 or 3 excitements in Brevard County Class 2A. Consists of Brevard Heat, Covenant Christian, Masters Academy, Merritt Island Christian, and Morningside. Masters Academy and Covenant Christian, the top 2 teams from last year. But all of a sudden, the Cougars from Merritt Island Christian have shown they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. Merritt Island Christian will play the Heat the first week back from the holiday season. The Cougars did defeat them earlier in the year. It's a big game because they want to get that high seeding. You don't want to play the elite teams in the district. So obviously the more games you can win during the regular season against your district opponents, the better. So that's a big one on January 8th. The very next day, Covenant Christian and Masters Academy go at it. Those are the top 2 teams from last year. And then rounding out 2A, the Heat will come back and compete against Covenant Christian. So you have the top teams in Class 2A really butting heads over the next 5 to 6 days. After that occurs, we'll have a pretty good idea of the seedings come district time.
Very good. Orville, what's your take?
Well, on the Class 3A, we look first at District 13. That has Benjamin out of Palm Beach Gardens down south, Florida Air Academy in Melbourne, John Carroll out of Fort Pierce, and then we have the Melbourne Central Catholic Hustlers, obviously, in Melbourne. Last year, Melbourne Central Catholic won that district, and Florida Air came in second. Florida Air, you have to like what they're doing. They play Rockledge this week, and they play them twice. Neither one of those games are district games, but it'd be big for both teams to see where they're at as far as playing ability. Florida Air, Alex Gordon, Nicole Dias, and Riviera Gomez. That's the three that like to put a lot of points on the board for Florida Air Academy. That's their big 3. For MCC, Kamari Jones and Ashley Burklager are the ladies that like to score the points for MCC, but you have to like both of those teams going into next week. They're going to play a lot of games in the next couple of weeks, but the big ones right now are going to be 2 games for Florida Air against Rockledge and then FAA against MCC. That'll be the ones everybody will want to watch this upcoming week.
Class 4A, District 8 in Brevard County consists of the Astronaut War Eagles, Cocoa Tigers, Cocoa Beach Minutemen, Edgewood Indians, Holy Trinity Tigers, Space Coast Vipers, and the West Shore Wildcats, one of the larger districts in Brevard County. You have to look at the Astronaut War Eagles and the Cocoa Tigers as the top 2 teams. They have been the last couple of years, and really nothing has changed up to this point. Coach Hostetler's War Eagles are really playing solid basketball. They won their first 6 games out of the chute this year, and then played some tough competition, lost a game or two. But at this point, with Price still on the injury list for the Cocoa Tigers, I think the War Eagles are the team to beat. West Shore, we got our first look at Coach Smith's West Shore Wildcats about 2 weeks ago as the Friday night locker room traveled to Space Coast to watch the Vipers and the Wildcats. Very impressive basketball team. I don't know that they're quite at the level of the Cocoa Tigers or the Astronaut War Eagles, but they will play Astronaut on the 6th of January, and that'll tell us a little bit more about the Wildcats. Lydia Klein, a big scorer for the Wildcats. Cador, a big scorer for the War Eagles. So expect a lot of points in that game. The Cocoa Tigers will play the Rockledge Raiders. It's a non-district game, but a lot of interest whenever the Tigers and the Raiders get together in any sport. But basketball this year as much as any. Some people say the Rockledge Raiders are the best team in the county. We will talk a little bit about that later. They're very good. And the Cocoa Tigers, if Price is back in time by the 17th of January, and we hope she is, she changes the complexion of the Tigers team, I'll look for a strong contest. Once again, it's not a district contest, but will create a lot of excitement around the county. And the Titusville Terriers and the Astronaut War Eagles. Once again, a big rivalry in the northern part of the county. Coach wins. Terriers, one of the top teams easily in Brevard County. Just talked about the War Eagles. So you've got 2 or 3 key matchups that aren't necessarily district contests other than the West Shore Astronaut game. But a lot of excitement in the next 2 or 3 weeks in and around Class 4A.
Sounds great. Orville, what's your take on that 4A?
Well, 4A, like Steve said, he just covered that. I'll go over the 5A a little bit. Class 5A, we have 2 districts in that, Tom, District 14 and District 15. We'll talk about District 14 first. That consists of Merritt Island, Rockledge, Satellite, and Titusville. Last year, the Titusville Terriers won that district with Rockledge coming in second. Right now, it's reversed a little bit. The Rockledge Raiders girls team playing extremely well. They have not lost a game yet this season, and they're doing like Shanika Smith, LaPresley Stanley, Tajina Chappels. That's the 3 girls, all 3 scoring in double figures just about every game that Reuben Williams and the Rockledge Raider ladies play. Rockledge, like we said earlier when we talked about 3A, they will play FAA twice in the upcoming days, so that should be exciting for ladies basketball fans to see how that comes out. The Rockledge Raiders then will turn and play Astronaut. They'll have three games next week, or that coming up that will have some significance throughout the county. But the Astronaut War Eagles, you got Cador, you got Bats, you got Hepburn, all 3 of them ladies doing well for the Astronaut War Eagles. And then Satellite and Titusville go at it. Titusville will talk, like Steve said later, about the top 5. Titusville Terriers ladies doing a nice job, and they've got a couple big guns for them also. So it's going to be exciting in the Class 5A District 14. And on the District 15 part, you got Bayside, Palm Bay, and Suncoast, all 3 in the south end of the county. Suncoast was the #1 team in that district last year. Bayside come in at number 2. Big game this week will be the Palm Bay Pirates. We'll travel down to Suncoast, and that will be on the 9th, or that will be January 9th. That will be the big one coming up in that district.
Sounds exciting. Steve, how about 6A?
We're going to move into Class 6A. There are 4 teams in Class 6A, 2 from Orlando area and 2 from Brevard. You have the Edgewater Eagles and East River out of the Orlando area, and you have O'Galley and Heritage locally. That district belongs to Edgewater. It has from day one, and it's going to. They're going to be the #1 seed, and they're going to win the district. There's no question about that. I say that, and the Heritage Panther fans are going to bark and argue about that, but at this point in time, it's really not a contest. The real battle is for the other 3 spots, and they're so evenly matched. You got East River going against O'Galley the first week in January. East River at Heritage 2 days later on the 9th. East River beat Heritage by 1 point earlier, so it's a huge game for the Panthers. If they can beat East River, it really throws that 2, 3, and 4 seed up in the air, that spot. So there's some really big games coming up, and then O'Galley will play at Heritage. I think the Panthers will probably win that game, but O'Galley's going to need big games from Megan and Christian Hagee, the Hagee sisters, to be successful. They're just even though it's a relatively small district, they're just some quality teams with Heritage and Edgewater. I love Heritage. Sydney Gurdon and Sydney Chung, the Sydney ladies, are scoring some points. So it's going to be an exciting district from this point forward. I think they're all going to be chasing Edgewater when all said and done. They're still the team to beat.
Okay, Orville, what's your take on the 7A action?
Well, Class 7A District 12, we've got a team from the south, and that's Martin County. They were the number 2 team in that district last year. Melbourne Bulldogs, Sebastian River, and the Vieira Hawks. The Vieira Hawks, number 1 in that district last year with a 22-4 record. You have to like what the Hawks did last year. They're not as strong, I don't think, yet as they were last year. They've lost some ball games that I think that they should have won. But still, the whole thing about basketball is you play all season to seed into the district. So, they could, as long as they win their district games and get the seed that they want, I think the Vieira Hawks will be happy. Big games, Sebastian River plays at Vieira. And then last time Sebastian River won that game, they beat Vieira 57-49. So Vieira Hawks will be looking for a rematch win there when they take on the Sharks. And that's Class 7A for the ladies.
Okay, guys, I know there's a little disparity here when we get to the top 5 section of our show, but let's get right into it. Steve, what's your top 5 in the girls' basketball realm?
Well, before we get into that, we'd like to wish everybody, hopefully they had a Merry Christmas and looking forward to a Happy New Year. I, fortunately, was a good boy last year. Santa Claus brought me a lot of goodies. My hope is that my partner in blue was a good boy, and Santa Claus maybe brought him some common sense when it came to selecting the top 5, because he seems to struggle in that department. He knows a lot about basketball, but he struggles piecing it together. So I'm actually going to mention 10 teams instead of a top 5. I have 2 almost honorable mention teams in Heritage and West Shore. They're both good basketball teams. They're knocking on the door of the honorable mentions. Then we're going to look at Astronaut, Cocoa, and Melbourne. The only reason I have Cocoa outside of the top 5 is the same reason I had them outside last week, because Price is still injured, and that one player makes a huge difference. Astronaut War Eagles, I don't know that I'd want to play them at this point in time. Coach Hostetler's girls are just getting better and better and better. They're at number 6 right now, but they're going to be in the top 5 before the season's out. And the Bulldogs from Melbourne just win a lot of basketball games like the counterpart on the boys' side. Top 5, I have the Vieira Hawks. They're playing solid basketball, not quite as strong as they were last year. I think they're going to have a hard time with Sebastian River coming out of their district, but I look for Vieira to make the playoffs, probably as the runner-up. I have MCC Hustlers, Coach Candy Terry's Hustlers at number 4. I just like the way they play. They remind me a lot of Melbourne girls basketball. They just win games. They go out there and win. Titusville Terriers, Coach Wynn's Terriers. Kind of rolling over from last year. Won a lot of games last year. Press, play solid defense, shoot the ball well. They do it all. I have them sitting at number 3. The second-ranked team in Brevard County at this point, and gaining up on the number 1, I have the Rockleys Raiders sitting at number 2. I know they haven't lost a game this season, but the Falcons from Florida Air Academy have not lost a game in Brevard County. The main reason I have the Falcons number 1 is with the level of competition Florida Air has played. It's been much stronger. They're going out of the county, kind of like the Florida Air boys. They play a lot of stiff competition. They've lost some of those games. If you look at the comparable scores throughout the season, you give the nod maybe to the Raiders, but I just like the level of competition Florida Air has played. And we'll find out in a couple of weeks when those teams do battle who the top team in Brevard County is. But as of now, I have the Raiders sitting at number 2 and the Falcons at number 1.
Very good, Steve. I know that Orville is going to have a bit of a different opinion. So, Orville, what's your take on that?
Well, first off, I too would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Hope they had a nice holiday. You know, Steve and I do a lot of traveling around the county and out of the county to different venues. And before Christmas, we spent a lot of time on the road, going from different mall to mall. I had to take Steve to every Santa Claus that was in town so he could sit on their lap and tell him stories of grandeur, that how good he has been all year long. Don't believe it worked. We spent $500 in gas and put 1,000 miles on the van. But being the director of transportation, I have to do things like that for the president of Florida Broadcasting Group. But that being said, he has, you know, we go from top 5 to last week we had a top 9. Now we have a top, 18 or whatever it is. He only does that for 2 reasons. One, so he's got a better chance of being halfway correct. The other is so he can get more airtime. Not important to me at all, so I'll give you my top 5 and we'll move on. And then at the end, we'll figure out exactly how it goes.
You're finally going to give the top 5 after talking for about 10 minutes. Please, I'm anxious to hear this.
I've got the Astronaut War Eagles and the Vieira Hawks out of the top 5, but right at a number 5 mention. I have MCC Hustlers at number 5. I've got the Cocoa Tigers at number 4. And I agree with Steve. Their big girl is down, and once she gets back, things should happen better for the Cocoa Tigers. I got Florida Air, Steve's number 1 team, at number 3. I've got the Titusville Terriers at number 2, and I've got the Rockledge Raiders undefeated, unblemished. Every game they've won, the closest score has been by 9 points. Most of them has been, all of them but one has been by double figures. Reuben Williams and the Rockledge Raider girls are cruising right now, and I don't see that to change. I've got the Raiders at number 1.
Well, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an exciting second half for the prep girls basketball season, and we will have Steve and Orville continue to bring their updates and their expertise throughout the year. We're looking forward to that, gentlemen.
Same here.
Thank you very much.